I thought I would just add a brief video that sets out a little bit of data from a book that's just been published today as I'm speaking. That is March 17th. A book by a couple of economists at Princeton University named Anne Case and Angus Deaton. Angus Deaton is a fairly recent winner of the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics. And their book is called Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism. It's really about the United States, so capitalism in the United States. They call it Deaths of Despair because the death rates that they're looking at over this period, 1992 to 2017, come from, you might say, sort of fast and slow suicide. So they look at suicide rates, which are shown in the middle portion, and they look at drug overdoses, both from painkillers, heroin, fentanyl, and related kinds of drugs, as well as deaths from liver disease due to alcoholism. The critical thing, as you can see here, is that what they've done is they've divided the groups that died from these different causes by education levels. So the blue lines show people who've got a university degree or higher, and the red lines show everybody else. And this particular graph just shows people, both men and women, aged 50 to 54. So what they have are 5-year age groups, but they more or less all look the same as this. You can also see from the title that what they're looking at are a particular part of the population, white non-Hispanics. The behavior of Spanish-speaking people is different. So they're looking at the white population. And what is obvious about these pictures, and very striking, is the incredible increases in these deaths of despair, whether it's from drug overdoses, suicide, or alcoholic liver disease, among people who don't have a university degree. And people who do have a university degree are just living in a different world, it seems. In terms of drug overdoses, there is some upward trend there among even people with university degrees, but nowhere near what's happening with the rest of the population. So the cumulative effect of this across the white population, aged sort of about like 25 to 64, is to pull down the overall life expectancy in the United States. It's been decreasing for 3 years in a row, 4 years in a row for white non-Hispanics. And this is something that has not been seen in more than a century. So it's an indication that something is going deeply wrong with capitalism in the United States. Well, they have another way of breaking down the data that is also quite instructive. So I'll show you a second slide. This second slide presents the data in a rather different way. What they do is they break the population down by birth year. We can see it most clearly here in this part of the population that doesn't have a university degree. So what they're showing here is the ages of those people between 1992 and 2017. And on the vertical axis here, we see the death rate per 100,000 persons in the population. And in this case, it's per 100,000 people of that particular age group. So what we're seeing here is, say if we look at the people born in 1985, we see as they go through their 20s, this would be about to age 30, it looks like, roughly, early 30s, these death rates are going up at a tremendous rate. And what's striking is that the death rates, as people are, as any one group is getting older, is increasing ever more rapidly for these younger age groups. And if you look at people born 1945, 1940, 1935, people who were going through their late 50s and into their 60s and 70s, there's virtually no trend there. But whatever's going on in the US is impacting people who were born in these years here, so relatively younger people. You can see that this group that's got a bachelor's degree or more is just completely different from the group that doesn't. You can see some upward trends here. And I suppose in percentage terms, some of those changes are fairly large. But the kind of differences that you see between the group that doesn't have a university education and the group that does is really very striking. So why is this happening? Well, very briefly put, their explanation is not that this is due to inequality. What they're saying is that the economic system itself is fundamentally unfair, and that what's going on is that the wealthy are using their political and economic power to transfer income to themselves from the rest of the population. It's sort of like the opposite of Robin Hood, you might say. So the result of that plunder by the people at the top is growing inequality. But that's simply a reflection of a deeper political problem that the US faces. So I think one could quite plausibly connect that to the sad political situation that exists in the US as well. Okay, well, I thought I would just include that because it's something that's just come out, is kind of connected to the social gradient of health and is connected to this topic of inequality. Well, I'm going to go on and look at how we can actually measure inequality and see what it looks like in Canada and what government policy can do about it.